Switzerland produces around 15 to 20 million watches a year, but it's only about 2% of the global manufacturing. But it makes up more than 50% of the total global value of the watch industry, with more than 95% of Swiss watches selling over 1,100 bucks. But which specific brands dominate the industry? Let's jump in and find out. So what are the top 10 luxury watch brands? It's Rolex, Cartier, Omega, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, Mille, Longines, Vacheron, Breitling, and IWC. And who is the top luxury brand in the world? There's a reason why there's a crown on every box and on every watch. They are the king. And number 2 is like way down there. It is the most recognizable watch in the world. I've always said that if you're in the middle of a desert and you're dying of thirst and you have a Rolex on your wrist, you can buy 6 camels, 6 gallons of water, and probably 6 wives to go along with it. Now, the data we have, the actual data that we have right now is 2023. 2024 data didn't come out yet. Assuming it's going to be slightly lower. 2024 wasn't a great year, but 2023, 30% of the entire Swiss watch market, 1.24 million watches sold, $11.2 billion. And the average price was 13,000 and change, 13.5 something or other. This is primary market. If I told you that you can probably double that, if not more, if you took into consideration the secondary market, I would not be wrong. I know what my company sold last year, or in 2023, we did $33 million in Rolexes.
33 million for us. And we're one of the top gray market dealers
in
the world. That 33 million doesn't even scratch the surface of their total sales, and we're one of the biggest.
So you're telling me my Rolex sales sucks. Thanks. Let's go to the next one, Matt, okay? And that's Cartier. Used to be Omega. Now Cartier took over. Are you surprised? I'm not surprised. But the most iconic brands out there, the brand that came out with the very first wristwatch, the Cartier Santos, right? Well, no, I should take it back. Very first men's wristwatch. The first wristwatch was the Queen of Naples by Breguet, right? But at 3.44 billion in sales, 2023, they gave them an 8% share of the market. 660,000 watches sold, King. And their average price was $63.40. See the drop off? Literally, they sold half of what Rolex sold. Oddly enough, if I remember correctly, in 2023, our Cartier sales weren't half of Rolex sales. They were less. They were probably 1/3 of that. So those numbers don't really match up, but then perhaps we should step up our Cartier game. I guess if you look at the average price point, it's half of what that of Rolex, so hence the revenue obviously is smaller. People ask me like, oh, your sales went down in 2024 by a good 20% when a Pepsi GMT was trading for $30,000 worth of $20,000. We didn't sell any less Pepsi GMTs, we just sold them cheaper, hence the revenue numbers suffered. Good thing profits stayed the same. So Omega used to be that number 2 and got surpassed by the Cartier. 2.89 billion in sales. Oddly enough, they sold 570,000 watches, and the average ticket was $7,296,000, and they hold 7% of the revenue. Seemingly, these numbers won't make sense because, like, wait a minute, they have our average ticket was about $1,000 higher, but they did sell 570,000 watches, which versus 660,000 watches for Cartier. And I think this is a fight we're going to continually see going forward. Do the Swatch Omega watches count toward the Omega sales? I don't think they do. They count towards Swatch sales. If they did, this number would be a lot larger.
Right. You know why? It's because we're doing only luxury. So if it's not considered luxury.
Well, you're saying the Moon watch is not a luxury watch from Swatch Watch? No? I mean, I agree. I'm just checking. My favorite brand, Audemars Piguet, that holds a 5% market share. Notice the average price tag and the number of watches sold right away. It's like it literally took a dip. They're still at 2.6 billion in sales, but the average ticket is almost $54,000. Do you rather have Omega's business model or Audemars Piguet business model? I'll answer the question for you. I'd rather have Omega's business model because a lot more diversity, right? Sometimes selling a higher ticket item is a lot harder. The margins become lower, at least on the resale end of things for me, which is why we try to diversify and have a $1,500 Tag Heuer and $1 million Richard Mille. We all know that Audemars Piguet mainly is Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, right? Curious to see how they're going to shift under the new CEO this year and see what happens. But nevertheless, in 2023, they did pull in 2.6 billion in sales by only selling 51,000 watches.
Do you think if they lowered that average retail price, that
they can't. They can't lower the average retail price because you set a standard, if you will. I have never seen companies drastically reduce their retail prices unless they were in financial troubles or somebody else came in and took over. A company that was in financial troubles, a company like Audemars Piguet, they have a standard to keep up with, right? They're known as an expensive watch brand. That's part of the allure for the clients too. The Rolls Royce of all watches. Patek Philippe, 6% market share, 70,000 watches sold. Average ticket was $44,389. They're lower than AP, average ticket price, of course they are. Think about all the Calatravas, think about the Nautiluses, because remember, guys aren't counting the Nautiluses that are selling at 3-4x their value. On the secondary market, they're counting it at retail price. Notice the market share after after Rolex, it just literally drops off by a point. That's how close of a race this is. I will tell you this, that if I took all the secondary sales on Patek Philippe on the secondary market, it way surpassed that number. Guarantee you. Richard Mille, look at that number. 5,600 watches sold. Well, boy, that's a drastic drop. But yet, 1.7 billion in sales. Average ticket price, 300,000 plus. And yet, they're still able to hold a 3% market share. This is where you start seeing market shares drop off a bit more drastic, right? We all know Richard Mille. We all know it is that expensive toy. But I'm always bring to the attention, they're not just an expensive flexi watch. They're a powerhouse when it comes to horology. Richard Mille's kind of been around like the same time that Luxury Bazaar has, by the way. You know, when I was starting Luxury Bazaar, where somebody told me, hey, do you want to invest into this company called Richard Mille? High price, high design, high horology, high flex. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Richard Mille is the only brand out there where every single watch in the catalog is a flex. Every single one of them. Longines. This is your entry-level luxury watch brand. It's sort of that quiet brand that sells 1.6 million watches per year at an average ticket price of 1,100 and change, giving it 1.2 billion in sales. It's funny, I talk to people about Longines and I tell them, you know, they're a powerhouse, they're in the top 10. People are like, really, Longines? I'm like, yeah, Longines. Think about when you're traveling, you go into these duty-free shops and you go into these shops in the airports. Longines is there. It's a gateway watch. It is a quality Swiss-made watch with history. And guess what? People gravitate towards that because they also make good-looking watches. Now, we don't do a whole lot of Longines business, I'll be honest with you. With an average retail price of $1,100, it's just not something we've ever done. And if you haven't done it in the past, it's kind of hard to break into that market. Would I love to have sold 1% of that 1.23 billion on the secondary? Yes. Couldn't speak for the secondary numbers because, again, not something that we've been involved with in the last 20 years. We've had plenty of Longines here and there, just kind of come in and out, but most people get surprised when they hear the name Longines. Vacheron, part of the Holy Trinity, right? So we got Patek, we got AP, now we got to talk about Vacheron. Oldest continuously operating watchmaker. It's the newest member of the Billionaire Club. Passed 1.22 billion in sales with 35,000 watches sold, also taking 3% of the market share with an average retail price of $43,000. I got a strong feeling, along with everyone else, you're going to see some decreases because the market has changed since 2023 tremendously, and 2024 was crap, and 2025 we're finally stabilized and we're going to see a bit of an uptick here. But part of this uptick for Vacheron was the overseas, when the entire hype came about sports watches and them trading at 2, 3, 4, 5x their retail value. That's what I think was part of the reason why pricing has gone up. I absolutely admire the brand. I absolutely love the watchmaking. I absolutely love the models. So many iconic things from Vacheron. But they're still under a big group and they're not an independent watchmaker, so they play by the book. And I've spoken to a multitude of CEOs of all the major brands out there. For years, I've been saying, guys, pay attention to the secondary. For years, they haven't. Now they're starting to pay attention to that because they're realizing how that affects them. When people ask me the questions, oh, don't you think these brands love the fact that their watches are selling way over list? They actually don't. And the reason they don't, because they know that nothing lasts forever and it goes in waves. And the after effects of a boom, exactly what we're seeing on the market today. A lot of watches dropping in value and retail sales on the primary dropping. Breitling, thank you, George Kern. He took over the company leadership in 2017 and they are doing much better than they were before. Because not too long ago, I remember buying Breitling closeouts and nobody wanted them. They're holding a 2% market share, 178,000 watches sold. Their average ticket was $7,500, just under $1 billion in sales. And oddly enough, regardless of the market, I see what Breitling is doing. I see the watches that they're coming out with. I see the direction that they're taking. Don't be surprised that you see them join that $1 billion club, and soon. So IWC, and this is where Tissot falls in, but Tissot is still not considered by most to be a luxury brand, which is, I can agree and disagree, but that's not an argument I want to have here. I like Tissot. IWC takes 2% of the market share with 137,000 watches sold. Similar price tag, average price tag to Breitling, $7,800 about. 805 million in sales. And thinking outside the box, taking the pilot line and jump on a bandwagon of material use like all the other companies, for example, ceramic. The company's starting to shake things up a little bit. They come out of the shell and realizing that, hey, we got to do something different. We got to keep up with trends. People do tend to go for trends. They're finally started to realize the power of social media, the power of the secondary market, and understanding that, hey, brand quality is just not enough. It also has to be cool to show off. Flex, flex, flex. Flex has become a humongous factor, and now you can see some of these brands catching on by making watches that seemingly could be a flex when you have it on the wrist. But what's in store for IWC? Well, I don't know if you guys saw Watch News Weekly. I talked about the new IWC they made for Total Wolf coming out of the shell of the Pilot, right? It's still a Pilot, but it just looks different, right? All the Pilot watches seemingly look the same, right? So you gotta shake things up. You gotta do things a little bit different. Get rid of some lines, introduce some new lines. That's how I look at it. These are your top 10 by the numbers. And again, numbers according to the information available publicly, right? What you don't have is information available in the secondary. A lot of the brands that I just mentioned closer to the number one spot are most likely selling more watches on the secondary than they are on the primary. So with that said, if you did like this content, as I always ask, like, comment, share, subscribe to all those wonderful things that help our channel grow, and I will see you on the next one.